Now in the Legend of Zelda games, there are a lot of iconic enemies. I bet a bunch of them just popped up in your head now that I even mentioned it. And one of those has to be the Moblin, one of the most iconic enemies seen in the franchise, that was seen in the very first game, as well as the most recent one. However, out of all the versions seen in the game, which ones are the best? Some of them certainly have better tactics and a more interesting design, and today we will finally find out which ones are the best out of all of them. Well, according to me at least. So, let's dive right in. Number 5. Now, as a lot of you know, I'm not a big fan of Skyward Sword. Sure, it has some things going for itself like a decent story and the item upgrading, but there are also a lot of things wrong with it in my opinion. However, there's one thing in this game that I like a lot, the Moblins. Because they are quite special in my opinion. Because we see shield Moblins in this game, which were actually new, and I gotta say it worked out pretty well. Now they appear as obese red monsters with grotesque features, somewhat resembling the common, smaller bokoblin. And in the game we encounter two varieties, one with a wooden shield and another with a metal shield. Both types carry large square-shaped shields they use to defend themselves with and are equipped with a spear for offense. Now as a player, your biggest problem is their shield, and that's because these are quite durable. And while it's possible to destroy a Moblin's wooden shield, the same cannot be done against the metal variety. Now these superb defenses combined together with their attacking power makes them elite enemies for sure. They are above a lot of others seen in the game, and personally I like them a lot because they pull off the shield wielding enemy well, especially for a 3D game where this is a lot harder. Before this we mostly came across enemies with such a loadout in 2D games, which could be a bit of a hit and miss. Usually you just wildly attack those in the hope to land a hit. Overall it was a bit brain dead in a way, and this isn't the case with the shield Moblins in Skyward Sword. You have multiple options when taking them on actually. You can cut their shield to bits, throw a bomb behind them so they would turn around, climb over their shield to the other side, attack from an angle to get around their shield, and more. It's surprising how much you can do to get an edge over the shield Moblin, and personally I think that's pretty cool. Number 4. Now, while the previous Moblin was huge and quite a thick boy to be honest, our next one is, quite the opposite. And that's because it's the one seen in Breath of the Wild, who portrayed the Moblin in a completely different way, which we had never really seen before to be honest. In this game they have a lankier and taller stature than of previous games, which they sustained with an exclusively carnivore diet apparently. Now they often wield Moblin clubs which they use to bludgeon opponents with, or Moblin spears that they stab you with. And when defeated they may drop Moblin fangs, horns and guts. Now there are several variations of Moblin in this game. These include the blue, black, silver, gold, steel and cursed Moblins. Clearly, there are a lot of types in this game, and in general, all of them are very different compared to the previous one we talked about. In general, these guys are a lot faster and use a wide variety of weapons, some stronger than others, so at times they can be incredibly dangerous. Now, they can still be pretty slow at times, so tall that they usually miss, and are easy to dodge, but I still quite like them. And that's mostly because they can be very creative when it comes to their approach. For example, if they don't have any weapons, they will sometimes pick up bokoblins, if there are any in reach, and will throw them at you. Stuff like this is so unexpected, which I really like, because sometimes enemies in Nintendo games are quite boring and predictable, which isn't the case with a lot of enemies in Breath of the Wild. All of them react in fun and logical ways. In a way, it feels like they are actually thinking for themselves, and that is quite cool. Number 3. Now we move on to the next Moblin, and again, it is very different from the previous one we talked about, because these Moblins are 2D, and actually look a whole lot better than the ones seen in Breath of the Wild. I'm of course talking about the Moblins seen in the Minish Cap, which, in my opinion, is the best looking 2D Zelda game ever. In this title, we encounter the normal spear Moblins, but also a new type that uses a bow instead of some sort of melee weapon. Now they are identical to those in Four Swords, which were originally from the Wind Waker. And yes, that game came out before the Minish Cap. Now their tactics are pretty simple. Spear Moblins charge at you, while bow Moblins shoot arrows and try to get away from you. So in general, their strategy is quite simple and nothing new to be honest. However, if you combine the two, it works incredibly well. The ones with the spear will constantly charge at you and keep you busy when it comes to melee combat, while the other Moblins who use bows will constantly shoot arrows at you, which can be stressful to deal with if those other lunatics run at you with spears. Now, to be honest, this combo isn't really new. We already saw this in a game like A Link to the Past. However, enemies have never looked this good. The animations are beautiful, the pixel art is very detailed, and the designs that they took from the Wind Waker look incredible. So they do their job as an enemy very well while also looking stunning. To be honest, for those reasons, I love them. Number 2. Now, in a lot of 2D Zelda games, we see a standard type of Moblin. It has a way of dealing with Link as soon as he sees him, and that hasn't changed much in quite some time. However, in A Link Between Worlds, we saw the peak of this type of Moblin. In my opinion, they are almost perfect. Now, they are directly based on those from A Link to the Past, and appear throughout Lorule as common enemies. And there are two varieties. One that uses a spear and throws it at you, and another that's armored and carries a sword and shield. The first tries to maintain distance away from you as they aim their javelins at you, while the other charges at you directly as soon as they see you, and their shields are able to block your sword attacks. So with the first, the best tactic is to block their attack and then quickly move in, while the best way to defeat the other is by attacking their unprotected backsides. Now personally, I think these two enemies combined make for the best Moblin challenge seen in the 2D games. And that's also because you have other ways of stunning or getting rid of the shield enemies, like the Sand Rod, which temporarily stuns them. However, in general, one is incredibly good at keeping you busy and putting pressure on you, even better than the one in the Minish Cap because of the shield, while the Javel Moblin bombards you from afar, which works just as well as the Bow Moblin from the Minish Cap. So it's perfect. Now sure, they don't look that great compared to basically everything else seen in the Minish Cap, but they do their job as an enemy much better. However, while they are quite sweet, there is still one Moblin left that's quite different from these ones, but a lot more fun in my opinion. Number 1. Now we get to the very best one. And that's not because his tactics are awesome or something completely new. It's mostly because of his design and behavior. Because in the Wind Waker, the Moblins are something else, I gotta say. I absolutely love them. Now they are often seen patrolling Ganon's territory, such as submarines, temples, and notably the Forsaken Fortress. Usually they carry a large spear which can be picked up and wielded by Link when dropped. Aside from that, they attack by swiping, stabbing, or crushing Link with their spears. They really have an immense reach with that thing, but their wide swings mean that 2 or more Moblins in proximity or any other enemy are likely to get injured or even killed, and in some places they also have a lantern which they throw at you when they spot you, acting as a smokescreen of sorts that can also hurt you. Now if they are disarmed, they will unleash mighty, lightning fast punches until it gets its spear back. Overall they are big and powerful, but not very smart, and their tactics are also not that special. So why do I even like them then? Well, they are incredibly cartoonish, in a good way. For example, if you strike the rear end of a Moblin, you will cry out and briefly hop around, due to the attack. Something like this is seen in no other Zelda game, but it does make them feel more lively and fun. It really makes me laugh. It's just so much fun to look at them. How they react to things, how they do certain things. It's great. Now another thing you can do if you want to see something funny is throw an explosive at them, because they are afraid of them and will flee in terror as soon as you throw it. In a way, they are a bit of a joke. Luckily enough though, they still offer enough of a challenge for your average Zelda player. In short, they are fun to fight, have a cool design which we also saw in the Minish Cap, and have an incredibly animated personality. And because of that, I absolutely love them. There aren't many enemies like them. The only ones I could think of are also seen in the Wind Waker, like the Moblins. And they had even woven these things into the story of some side characters like Maggie, who has a long-distance relationship with a Moblin named Mo, who lives in the Forsaken Fortress. They communicate through letters, and Mo indicates a disturbing hunger to see Maggie, and she thinks this means that he wants to marry her. As you can imagine, there's a lot of drama going on in that family, but regardless of that, I like them. This game was weird and wacky at times, and the Moblins are a great example of this, to be honest, which is just great. And now that we have reached the end of this video, I want to ask you all to like this video, subscribe, and hit that bell button. That way, you won't miss any future videos. Well, hopefully at least.